My brother slept with my girlfriend and called it just chemistry. So I waited 2 years. Then took his dream job and left him with nothing. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and growing up, I always lived in my brother Nate's shadow. Nate was the golden child. Tall, athletic, charming in that effortless way that made adults praise him and girls flock to him. He was the type of kid who could crash our parents' car and still get dessert. Meanwhile, I could bring home straight A's and get told to clean my room better next time. I wasn't invisible, I was useful. The responsible one. The one who could be left alone at 12, because he knows better. The one who stayed quiet when Nate hogged the spotlight because he's just excited. I was expected to understand, to sacrifice, to smile through it like I should be grateful just to exist in his orbit. Any time I achieved something, it was never mine alone. When I won a regional science fair, my dad said, "Must be all that competition with Nate pushing you." When I got into a better college than Nate, my mom said, "Your brother was focused on sports, like I'd stolen something that was meant for him." Teachers, neighbors, even relatives had the same line. Isn't it great to have a brother like him? I used to nod and pretend it didn't bother me. I even believed it for a while. I thought that's just how families worked. Some stars shine brighter, and others just orbit quietly, doing the work no one claps for. But the truth is, I didn't hate Nate. Not really. I just hated how I kept being told I should thank him for everything I did right. That somehow, even my best moments were borrowed from his glow. I lived like that for most of my life, grinning, nodding, biting down hard on the bitterness building inside me until he crossed a line. I'll never forget, I met Emily during my second year of college. She wasn't like the girls Nate dated. She didn't care about flashy things or status. She loved books, painted tiny canvases for fun, and had this way of making me feel like I wasn't invisible. For once, I wasn't Nate's little brother. I was just me, and that was enough for her. We started slow coffee shop dates, late night walks, long phone calls, until we both fell asleep on the line. She said I made her feel safe, that I actually listened, that I was the kind of guy she could build a life with. I didn't know love could feel that quiet and steady and good. After a year together, I started saving for a ring. I didn't tell anyone, not even my friends. I wanted it to be just ours, simple, private, honest. Emily and I had talked about moving in together after graduation. We'd even picked out a small rental we liked just off campus. She said she could see herself growing old with me. The only time I ever saw her nervous was when she met Nate. It was at my parents' 4th of July barbecue. He showed up late, wearing designer sunglasses and that effortless grin that made people hand him extra ribs without asking. Emily smiled and introduced herself politely, but I could feel her tense up when he called her adorable. I laughed it off. "That's just Nate," I said. "He flirts with everyone." She nodded. But I caught her watching him when he walked just for a second too long. Still, I brushed it off. I had her. We were solid. I was already planning how I'd propose on her birthday with her favorite cheesecake. Just us two under the stars. I thought we were safe. I thought I was finally building something no one could take from me. But I was wrong. It started like a regular weekend. I had a work seminar out of town today's mandatory attendance. Emily said she'd just stay at my apartment, catch up on reading, maybe organize the bookshelves she'd been nagging me about. I kissed her goodbye Friday morning, told her I'd be back Sunday afternoon, and that I'd bring her favorite cinnamon rolls from the bakery near the conference center. I'd had no idea that would be the last normal moment between us. Saturday night, Nate texted me, "You want me to drop by and check on Emily? Just in case." I didn't think twice. "Sure," I replied. "That'd be nice of you." When I got home Sunday, Emily was quiet. She didn't meet my eyes, said she felt tired and just wanted to sleep. Something in her tone felt off, distant. That night, as we lay in bed, I asked her if everything was okay. She hesitated too long, then said, "I have to tell you something." My heart dropped before she even said the words. She looked me in the eyes and said, "It just happened. We didn't plan it. It was just chemistry." I stared at her, trying to understand what she meant. What was chemistry? Her eyes welled up. "Nate?" Silence. Long, heavy silence. I couldn't breathe. She said it like it was a weather report. No tears, no panic. Just cold honesty, as if that made it better. As if the word chemistry excused sleeping with my brother, I got out of bed without a word. Sat in the hallway for what felt like an hour, trying to feel something. Anger, sadness, rage, but all I felt was numb. My brother slept with my girlfriend, and they both acted like it. It was no big deal. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there on the cold wooden floor, staring at nothing, while the woman I thought I'd marry slept peacefully in my bed, like she hadn't shattered everything. The next morning, she made coffee like it was any other day. She handed me a mug and said, "I know you're hurt, but I didn't mean for it to happen. We were just drawn to each other." I looked at her and asked, "Was it worth it?" She didn't answer. Just stared into her cup and said, "I think I love the idea of you." But with Nate, it just felt alive. Like I was dead weight she'd tolerated out of guilt. When I confronted Nate, he didn't even flinch. "You were too soft, man. She needed fire. Don't take it personal." He laughed like we were talking about a stolen parking spot, not a woman I'd given my heart to. I told my parents, expecting at least some kind of outrage, but my mom said, "Well, they're both adults." My dad sighed and said, "Don't blow this out of proportion. It's not like you were married." I stood there, stunned, betrayed not just by my brother and girlfriend, but by the people who were supposed to care if I was bleeding. Every time Nate messed up, they found a way to justify it. He's impulsive. He's got a wild heart. That's just Nate. But when I cried, I was being dramatic. I thought maybe Emily had used me. I knew Nate had betrayed me, but the worst part was realizing my family never really saw me, not as someone worth defending. The day after my parents brushed it off, I packed a bag and left. No goodbye, no explanations, just silence. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay in that house, in that city, in that life not another minute. I blocked Emily's number, blocked Nate, deleted every photo, every message, every trace of what I thought was love. I didn't even leave a note. I just disappeared. I moved 3 cities away and took the first tech job I could get. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough for rent and quiet. I got a studio apartment with yellowed blinds and thin walls. My neighbors fought almost every night, but somehow their chaos made mine feel less lonely. Most nights, I didn't eat. I'd sit on the floor with the lights off, scrolling through old playlists we made, trying to decide whether I felt more angry or empty. My phone buzzed once. It was Nate. Just one text. "Grow up." It wasn't that deep. I stared at that message until my battery died. The thing is, I was growing, just not the way he meant. The longer I sat in that silence, the more I started seeing clearly. I hadn't just lost a girlfriend. I hadn't just lost a brother. I had finally seen my place in a system built to ignore me, and I was done playing that part. I wasn't going to fight for space in a family that never made room for me. I wasn't going to beg for apologies from people who thought hurting me was a punchline. I was done being the one who understood. Now, I was going to be the one they remembered. Nate always had one dream: landing a job at Stratford & Cole, a prestigious design firm in our hometown. He talked about it nonstop growing up. Interned there during college, even wore their merch like it was a football team. Our parents bragged about it like he was already the CEO. I used to listen politely, nodding as he went on about vision boards and brand leadership, pretending I wasn't slowly vanishing in the background. He made it seem like that job was made for him. But a few months into my quiet new life, I stumbled on something that made me pause. Stratford & Cole had announced a sister expansion in my new city. I clicked the link out of curiosity, not intention, but the job description matched my new skill set perfectly. I'd been quietly building a portfolio, working nights, teaching myself digital branding like a man possessed. Rage makes a damn good teacher. I hesitated before applying. Revenge wasn't the plan, but justice. That was starting to taste right. I didn't put my full name on the resume, just JM and my updated portfolio. No mention of Nate, no connection to my past. Just the work, pure, raw, earned. 2 weeks later, I got a call. They loved my pitch deck, said it was fresh, strategic, bold. Wanted to meet me in person. Said I reminded them of someone who knew their company inside and out. I smiled quietly to myself. Nate knew that company like a fanboy, but I was about to own it like an architect. Asterisk, that moment, sitting alone with my phone in my palm, And my heart-racing eye didn't feel angry. I felt powerful. The first real seed had been planted, and I was going to grow it in silence. I poured everything into that job. Late nights, early mornings, no weekends. I studied the company's past campaigns like a scholar dissecting ancient texts. I learned their weak points, their blind spots, the clients they couldn't land, and the ones they'd lost. And then I started solving problems no one asked me to solve. I wasn't just doing my job, I was shaping their future. My manager noticed, then his boss did. Within 6 months, I was leading internal strategy calls. By 9 months, I was quietly asked if I'd consider a permanent role, something senior. I nodded and said I'd think about it. Inside, I was already miles ahead. Back home, Nate kept applying to the original Stratford & Cole HQ, the very office he used to call his destiny. And every time he sent in a resume, it got tossed into the pile I now had access to. He didn't know I was there. He didn't know I was becoming the person he always pretended to be. I kept a folder on my desktop labeled NS Apps. Not to sabotage him, I never touched them. I didn't need to. His work spoke for itself. All flair, no substance. All ego, no depth. It was the first time I realized Nate had always relied on being liked. But I was being respected. There's a difference between people clapping when you walk into a room and people rearranging the room when you speak. And I was just getting started. By the time I was offered a regional leadership track, I already knew my next move. I wasn't going to take his dream, I was going to make it mine. Right in front of him and watch him realize it was never really his to begin with. Out of nowhere, corporate announced a merger hour branch, and the original HQ were consolidating into one hybrid structure. And just like that, the place I'd run from became the place I was going back to. This time, not as the forgotten brother, but as a rising star in a company Nate still dreamed about like a child. When they asked me to relocate and help lead the transition, I said yes without hesitation. The same city I'd escaped in shame was now the city I'd be walking back into, with a corner office and the authority Nate had once boasted about like it was his birthright. I didn't tell anyone, not friends, not family, not even old coworkers. I kept everything quiet. When I arrived, I worked under my initials, JM, and played it humble. I slipped into meetings, took notes, advised discreetly behind the scenes. I didn't need attention. I needed positioning, and it worked. A month later, they hosted a formal announcement, new leadership for the consolidated firm. Name on the screen, bio accomplishments. Strategic wins. All mine. I stood at the back of the event room in a navy suit, sipping cheap champagne, when I saw him. Nate, he was there. Right there, pressed shirt, freshly printed resume in hand. Chatting with HR. He hadn't seen the slideshow. Yet, he didn't know who the new regional director was, but I did. I knew exactly how this was going to play out. He had no idea what was coming next. 2 days later, HR forwarded me a list of final interviews for open department roles. There, it was Nathaniel S. Martin, scheduled for 10:30 a.m. sharp. Portfolio attached. Cover letter full of buzzwords and humble brags. I told them to leave the meeting on the books. He walked in wearing a confident grin, dressed like he was already hired. When he saw me sitting across the table, his face twitched just for a second. Then he laughed. "You're the guy running this now." I leaned back in my chair. "Let's begin, shall we?" At first, he tried to play it cool, cracked jokes, tried using our shared last name as leverage, like it was an inside advantage. "Come on, man, it's me. This is full circle, right?" I kept it professional. "Please walk me through your most recent campaign project and its measurable outcomes," he stuttered. Fumbled through a half-baked response about team synergy and brand vibes. I pressed again. "What was your conversion rate increase specifically?" He blinked. "Around maybe 12%. No data tracking." "Well, not really, no." 10 minutes in, he realized I wasn't there to save him. 15 minutes in, he realized I wasn't there to admire him either. By the end of the interview, his confidence had cracked. Sweat lined his collar. His hands wouldn't stay still. He finally muttered, "You're really gonna do me like this?" I paused, looked him dead in the eye. Did you like this?" He left without shaking my hand. And when HR asked for final feedback, I said simply, "Candidate lacked clarity, preparation, and data fluency. Not a fit for the position. No drama. No revenge speech. Just truth. I closed the file, leaned back, and exhaled for the first time in 2 years. 3 days later, I got an email from the CEO. Subject line, "Call Re. Nathaniel Martin." Apparently, Nate had gone over my head. Claimed I was holding a grudge, said I sabotaged his interview. Tried to pull the brothers' fight, but we're still family card. He even included some of our old childhood photos in the messages, in matching Halloween costumes. Him holding me in a head. Both of us laughing like idiots. I thought I'd feel something when I saw those photos. I didn't. The CEO called me into his office. Asked if there was bad blood I hadn't disclosed. I told him the truth, but only the professional truth. We're estranged. That's public record. I recused emotion from the interview. His portfolio wasn't strong enough. He nodded. I figured he said you had it out for him, but the numbers spoke for themselves. I thanked him for trusting the data. Meanwhile, Nate sent me a text. I hope it was worth it. I didn't reply. A few hours later, Emily messaged me on LinkedIn.Emily, the same woman who said I was too boring, too safe. The one who slept with my brother and called it just chemistry. She said she'd been watching my rise and felt proud of how I'd bounced back. She ended her message with, "Maybe we could catch up sometime." I didn't block her. I didn't respond either, because power doesn't always come from lashing out. Sometimes it comes from knowing you don't have to say anything at all. And for the first time, I realized I didn't want closure. I already had control. It didn't take long for the phone calls to start. First, it was my mother. "How could you humiliate your brother like that?" she hissed. "You know how much this job meant to him." I held the phone in silence, letting her voice crackle through the line like static. She didn't ask how I was doing. Didn't ask if I was happy, if I was safe, if I was healing. Just rage. Just guilt. My dad called the next day. He was calmer, but no less condescending. "You've always been the smart one," he said. "You didn't have to punish him like this." I bit back the words building in my throat and said, "I didn't punish him. I just didn't save him." He sighed. "You've changed." "No," I said. "You're just seeing me without the leash." After that, I stopped picking up. The messages piled in. My aunt texted me a Bible verse. My cousin sent a 2-paragraph guilt trip about what family means. No one, not one single person, asked what Nate had done to me. It was like the past didn't matter. Like betrayal had an expiration date, and mine had passed. They said I was bitter, cold, ruthless. But the truth was, I was finally warm for the first time in years. Warm in the kind of way that comes when you stop, standing in someone else's shadow, and step fully into the light. They didn't like the new me because I no longer played the supporting role, and the moment I stopped letting them write my script, they called it revenge. I called it freedom. 2 weeks after the interview, I heard through a former classmate that Nate didn't get any callbacks, not from Stratford and Cole, not from anywhere. His online portfolio was outdated. Word had spread about his botched interview and lack of measurable work. In a field built on results, charm didn't carry him anymore. He moved back in with our parents, the golden child, the pride of the family, the one they said was born to lead. Now back in his childhood bedroom, 30 years old, blaming office politics for why the world wasn't bowing to him anymore. Emily didn't last either. I found out she ghosted him a few weeks after that. No dramatic exit, no heartfelt goodbye. Just gone. Like the fire she once praised had burned her too. My mom called again, this time in tears. "He's not eating. He barely leaves the house. He says you ruined his life." I didn't say what I wanted to. He ruined mine first. Instead, I asked gently, "Did he ever tell you what he did to me?" To Emily, to all of us. She went quiet. Then she whispered, "He said, you exaggerated, that it was complicated." Asterisk, of course he did. I hung up without saying goodbye that night. I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine and no music playing. Just silence. Not the kind that chokes you, but the kind that feels earned. This wasn't the revenge I had planned, but it was the balance life had owed me. And the truth is, I didn't break him. I just stepped out of the way and let the truth do the work. It had been about a year since the last phone call from my mother. I was leaving a local cafe one Saturday morning, just grabbing a latte before heading to the office for some quiet weekend hours. As I stepped outside, I saw him, Nate, sitting on a bench by himself. Hoodie pulled over his head, nursing a coffee like it was the last warm thing he had in his life. He looked thinner, pale, eyes sunken in like he hadn't slept well in months. We locked eyes. He stood slowly, as if unsure whether to speak or pretend he hadn't seen me. But eventually, he took a step forward. "Hey," he said, voice hoarse. "Can we talk?" I nodded. No anger left. Just curiosity. No big words. No accusations. For the first time in our entire lives, Nate didn't act like the center of the universe. He looked at me like a man who had finally run out of mirrors. "I always thought you'd never catch up," he admitted quietly, "but I'd always be the one ahead." I didn't respond. He sighed. "You didn't take anything from me. You just became what I pretended to be." That hit harder than I expected. For a second, I saw the brother I'd grown up admiring. Not the golden child. Not the entitled jerk. Just Nate, the flawed, broken man who finally understood his own weight. He reached out his hand, maybe hoping for forgiveness. Maybe just needing something human. I stood, looked down at him and said, "I hope you figure yourself out." Then I walked away. Because sometimes closure isn't a hug. It's a door that stays closed, and I had better places to be. After that conversation, something in me finally settled. I stopped checking Nate's social profiles. Stopped wondering what my parents were saying about me at Sunday dinners. Stopped replaying the betrayal like a bad song stuck on loop. Instead, I built Dot at work. I launched a mentorship program specifically for underdog applicants, quiet, overlooked people like I used to be, the ones who didn't sparkle in interviews but had depth in spades. I fought to get them seen, coached them myself, and watched them rise. That gave me more peace than revenge ever did. I started speaking at universities, giving workshops on personal branding and self-worth. My story, minus the names, became a case study on career recovery and emotional survival. People reached out from all over the country, saying they'd been the forgotten sibling too. I wasn't alone. I'd just finally said it out loud. I even donated anonymously to a program that supports betrayed men dealing with emotional trauma, because no one talks about that. But it happens. A lot. I never told anyone about the night. I almost proposed to Emily. Never shared the texts Nate sent begging for help before the job interview. Some things aren't meant to be stories. They're meant to be fuel. And by the time my name appeared on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list, no one mentioned Nate. No one asked if I had siblings. No one questioned if I'd gotten lucky, because I hadn't. I'd been ignored, undervalued, used, but I'd rebuilt, brick by painful brick, not to prove anything to them, but to prove everything to myself. When I made the local business journal for winning a regional innovation award, my parents finally reached out again. This time it wasn't guilt. It was pride manufactured, convenient pride. My mom commented on the article's Facebook post, "So proud of our son. Always knew he'd do big things." My dad shared it with the caption, "He followed in his brother's footsteps and took it even further." I stared at that line for a long time, followed in Nate's footsteps. It was like they had taken the truth, chewed it up, and spit out a fairy tale. I texted my mom one line, "Why rewrite a story you never even read?" She didn't reply. Later that week, I went home for the first time in years, for a funeral. My uncle had passed, and I felt like I owed him that goodbye. At the reception, relatives came up to me saying things like, "So glad you and Nate inspired each other," or "Your parents are so proud of both their boys." I just nodded. What was I supposed to say? Actually, Nate slept with my girlfriend, and my parents defended him, then called me cruel when I didn't hire him. No one wanted the truth. They wanted the version that made Thanksgiving dinners easier. But I wasn't angry because I knew what they didn't. I knew how many nights I'd cried alone, how many jobs I'd taken below my worth, how many times I'd sat in the dark and decided to keep going, even when no one clapped. I didn't need their version of history. I had lived the real one, and every success I had wasn't in spite of my past. It was because of it. I don't tell this story for sympathy. I tell it because I know someone out there is sitting in the same quiet I once sat in. The kind of quiet that follows betrayal so deep it empties you. The kind where no one believes your side, and even your own family thinks your pain is an overreaction. Let me tell you something. You're not crazy. You're not too sensitive. You're not bitter. You're just finally seeing things clearly, and that hurts like hell at first, but it's also the beginning of your freedom. I don't need revenge anymore. I don't check if Nate's still living at home. I don't wonder if Emily ever regrets what she lost, because it doesn't matter. Their stories don't shape me anymore. What matters is that I built something out of the wreckage. What matters is that I no longer ask people to love me. Love myself enough not to wait for them. These days, I still wake up early. I still overthink. I still carry scars that no one sees. But I also lead teams, mentor dreamers, sit at tables I used to fantasize about. And when people ask me how I did it, I just smile and say, quietly, because the best kind of win isn't the one they clap for, it's the one that doesn't need applause. So if you're reading this, waiting for closure, for justice, for the apology that may never come, don't wait, because one day they'll rewrite the story. But you'll be too busy living the sequel to care.